Hey everyone, welcome back to Williamson Ridge Outdoors. Today I've got kind of a little special treat. I've got something here that I've actually been wanting to get myself for a long time, but this one actually isn't mine. A friend that I work with actually lent this to me to open up and put together and try out. And what this is an Alaskan sawmill. And there's been so many times around the property that I was like, man, that tree right there would be good, for building some furniture or something out of, instead of, using it for firewood or whatever. Or there's a nice 6 or 8 foot log that, you kind of hate just to saw it up and burn it. I wanted to see if something like this that would be cost effective, whether it'd be worth getting this in order to try to use it for that purpose. I've been wanting to build maybe some end tables or maybe even a coffee table or something like that. And if I can slab out some pieces of wood, I've got some walnut trees actually around here that are in the edge of the field, and sometimes the horses and stuff are in there, and walnuts are actually not good for the horses to be walking on. So with that being said, this may be the perfect opportunity to be able to use our chainsaw mill for something like that. Said to use 4 of these. They call them coach bolts, but they look like carriage bolts to me, but they're calling them coach bolts, so that's what I'm going to call them today. But anyways, we use 4 of these, and we slide 1 into each of the long guide rails, and then you slide 2 into this short guide rail, and then you take the crossbar, put it on, and then on your crossbar you've got your bolts sticking up, and you put washers on one end, and then these long nuts on this side, and just finger tighten them. Then on the other side, you don't put washers on, but you put the handle on it, and then put these on it and snug them down finger tight. So it ended up getting dark on us the other evening before we could finish putting this thing together. So we're going to jump back in here and get it put together, hopefully get a chainsaw put in it. We'll at least try to test it out a little bit. Part that holds the bolts for your chain guard and stuff here, you notice I had to loosen that up so I could raise it up high enough to get these long bolts to clear, to be able to fit down through there. If it's up close to that, then those bolts you have to put in at an angle and they won't line up with your holes down here on the bottom. And also, these bolts you're supposed to leave a little bit loose, so that, of course, you can fit your bar and your chain through here in order to be able to mount your chainsaw up on there. It has to slide in between these 2 brackets in here. So we got that thing put together. We got our saw clamped into it. I'm using my Stihl MS500i for this with the 20-inch bar on it. Something I learned really quickly is you run out of capacity very fast with a 20-inch bar. So even though this mill says that it is rated to do from like 16 inches to 36 inches, Well, you have to have a much longer bar on your chainsaw to do 16 inches than a 16-inch bar, because the way that the setup is on it, that part of the mill takes up some of the bar right against the chainsaw, and then some of the mill takes up the nose on your bar. So if you have a 16-inch bar, you can't cut a 16-inch capacity. Now the log that I'm sitting on here, I took this top off. Now there's a whole lot better way to do this. In fact, that's why I didn't record it, because I didn't use any guides or anything. I just freehanded this and went across the top of the log just to kind of experiment with it to see how it would come out just from doing it that way without setting up some guides to get that first cut level. It would be 100% better to set you up some guide rails and get this first cut level, and it's mainly level side to side, not front to back. So that way, whenever you run your guide on there for your mill, then it's sitting flat across the top, and that is your guide from then on. So we'll get into that a little bit later and a little bit more, but let me show you what I've run into with my 20-inch bar. So the overall width on this log is 15 inches. So keeping that in mind, I have a 20-inch bar on my saw. This log is 15 inches overall, and the biggest cut that I can actually make on this, I can move down maybe an inch or so, and that would give me about 11 to 12 inches at most. So as you can see, I've actually run the first cut on here. It's not perfectly level all the way through. Actually, there's a knot down here, and it actually kind of raises up. So what really needs to be done is put some guides on here and level them up and get that first cut level. Then every cut after that will be level just from the chainsaw mill itself. So you wouldn't have to use that guide anymore, only on that initial cut. So if you look here on the mill, your guides for your chain or for your clamp for your bar are here. And then you've got the nose of your bar up here in this guard. And I didn't want to clamp that down all the way out on the end, because that's actually where that sprocket is. You know, and I didn't think that it would be a good idea to clamp down tight on that sprocket on the nose of the chain or on the nose of the bar. I backed it up to where the solid bar is at, and then let the nose stick out into the guard. And that only gives you about 12 inches of a 20-inch bar. So something to keep in mind when you're doing this, you know, if you have maybe a 16-inch bar on your chainsaw and you think, oh, I can get a 16-inch cut, you can't get anywhere near that. Like I say, it's really cut down drastically by the unit itself. So I'm going to put my 25-inch bar on there. That will give me plenty of capacity to do logs up to that 15-inch, because like I say, this one, it's right at capacity there, and you add 5 more inches and we'd be clearing it all the way down. And I actually could probably adjust this just a little bit and get just a little bit more room on that and maybe make one more pass, but the full width, I still probably wouldn't be able to make that. So again, just something I wanted to point out. But this really does give me a good idea of what this little chainsaw mill will be capable of. And that's really why I went ahead and done this. I'm kind of pressed on time right now, and I wanted to make a cut and just see kind of what it looked like. But I don't know if I can hold you down here, but you can see there's a hump right there where that knot was at. And that's because there was a hump on the outside of the log, so that guide was trying to follow that, and it created a hump there. So if you put those guides on there to make your first cut, it would pretty well eliminate that, and it would be a pretty good cut. And it's really not nearly as rough as I thought. There's a few places in there where I kind of gouged it and where it was kind of tipping over because the top of that was round. So the top of that is round, and you're trying to keep that from going left and right and falling over the sides and keeping your cut straight. So that's those uneven places. And like I say, if you had a guide on there, then that would fix that 100%. and you'd have a good clean cut the first time, and then your cuts from there on out would just be perfectly straight pretty much. So this video is going to be continued, because I want to put my longer bar in here, and I also actually want to go ahead and run me some guides down that log just to make sure everything gets straightened back up, because I don't want to keep sawing and the mill follow the log up and down, because every single cut you do from that is going to be up and down. But one more thing too I wanted to point out on this. This is the end right here that you put your saw in. There's not much detail in the directions of how to put this thing together. And when you go to put your saw in this end, you want to make sure that this section of the mill is all the way out to the end of your rails. And if you make it flush, your saw has a little bit more room to kind of go in there all the way up to the full bar length. So then the end with the bar protector on it will be the end you will just adjust to compensate for the length of your bar. So this end back here is going to stay the same, where you bring your saw in, and then you adjust just only this end to however long bar you have. So keep that in mind, because if you get this thing to the point where, like I say, if you get the end where the saw mounts and you get it too far up on the bar, then these bars stick out and you don't have any room to be able to mount your saw onto it, and it takes up some of your bar length. The sun is setting. I'm going to change that bar and do all that other stuff that I was talking about, and we'll have to continue this video when I have some more daylight.